Hey, we are back again for another episode for I Refuse podcast. It is Mr. Fox again. We are currently at season 1, episode 4, where I'm going to dedicate this episode to Okra and Kale and this whole fallout with Snoop Dogg and the whole controversy around his response. I'll start from the top. So, for me, I wouldn't say that I necessarily looked up to Oprah Winfrey coming up. While it's good that the representation of the first black billionaire is a great thing, I don't really recall in the timeline in my life where she has actually gone up for, or consistently gone up for, black causes, donating to black neighborhoods here, or, stateside. It always seemed like what she was doing, either on a talk show or causes, was a calculated move. While it's great that she has a school over in Africa for girls and the graduation rate is 100%, that in no way really directly ties to us over here at stateside. I was having a conversation with a coworker recently about how people that don't look like us don't go up for our causes, yet and still we find the need or the want to constantly go out for their causes, or defend or protect them when the energy is not the same for us, when the shoe is on the other foot. Case in point, Oprah, well, I know lately she's been pretty problematic with, the whole Michael Jackson thing. She had Michael Jackson on her show back in the early 90s, and it appears during that interview, and I remember watching it when I was younger, that she marveled at his performancing skills and everything that he does for pop culture, basically adoring him from afar during the course of this interview. Then you fast forward to this whole Leaving Neverland thing and this whole special right after the documentary, which was all a bunch of bullshit, a bunch of lies. The timeline of the two victims was not consistent with the reality of what was occurring in Neverland Ranch. At least one of them, mentioned a railroad during their experiences with Michael Jackson. The railroad wasn't built until later on. Secondly, the other person claims that, in fact, Michael Jackson did do something with him. This is after he testified in Michael Jackson's 2005 trial that, under oath, that nothing occurred. Yet and still, even what's facts and what's known, she decided to have this, give them a platform to continue the narrative. So, with that being said, they were able to continue with this case against Michael Jackson last year, which is crazy because how does a dead person end up with 2 new cases? And me using that degree, my mind went off and I was thinking about the real inspiration behind doing the documentary or having this or exercising this platform. They may not be getting money on the front end, but they were definitely getting money on the back end because specials and platforms and all that things of that nature leads to speaking engagements, which is money, book deals, endorsements, because everybody, people come out of the woodwork to want to help those that are perceived to be victims. Oprah was definitely part of that pipeline, and it made me, continue to look at her differently. I mean, I've been doing that for a while anyway. The way she went in on Toni Braxton on her talk show not too long after Toni Braxton's first bankruptcy. She had Toni Braxton on her show and basically in a condescending, passive-aggressive way looked down on her. Now, how Oprah was able to get information on Toni Braxton's finances or her spending habits is beyond me. I think it was a setup. And there's often a common theme between Oprah Winfrey and Kale King. You have these two women who are best friends, two black women that are best friends, have been best friends well over, 40 years now, almost 40 years. And they're both interviewers or journalists of some kind. What I've seen with my two eyes are parallels, and this is probably across the board, extending it to Robin Roberts, when they are interviewing other black people on a public forum, talk show, morning show, news show, what have you. There tends to be a baiting exercise that happens where they are pretty much gassing their black African-American people of color guests up for ratings or drama. For example, when Robin Roberts had Chris Brown on her show, and this was during his Fame era. This was probably a year or so after the whole Rihanna situation. Chris was there to discuss his music and talk about his singles. You know, it's part of the news junket, so to speak. And Robin Roberts, kept baiting him, bringing up the Rihanna situation, the fallout from that and everything, and he kept trying to bring the focus back to the music, which is the most important thing. There wasn't too much factual stuff that was out at the time, but it was definitely a dark cloud over Chris Brown and how women viewed him. As a woman beater, blah, 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 blah. Tying this back to Oprah and Tony, and then recently this whole excerpt from Gayle King's interview with Lisa Leslie, and even though that excerpt about Kobe Bryant was spread around, and there was some kind of damage control that was trying to be attempted with the interview, there's no way of getting around it. You know, you say, that wasn't supposed to air, but at the end of the day, you still asked the question, and the camera caught that. Doesn't matter whether or not it was supposed to air, it was part of the interview. And it was very much a tactless move, especially so close to Kobe's and Gigi's passing. Lisa Leslie handled that very, very, very well, and she managed to sneak in a very articulate, intelligent point that I don't think Gayle King had picked up on, is that there is a huge difference between what the media portrays Kobe to be and what I know of him to be. And that is the point. Like, of course, public opinion, is exactly what it is, but it's based off of perception. Whereas the reality, personal experience, is the factual. The thing about personal experience is that it's real time. You're seeing it with your very own eyes, and a person's character and a person's integrity is usually a consistent factual thing. Here you have a black woman interviewing another black woman, and from what I saw from the beginning up until that point where she asked about Kobe Bryant, was that this was really supposed to be about basketball, Lisa Leslie, where she was going in the future. But yet and still, Gayle King had to throw in that little piece about Kobe Bryant. Well, first of all, Kobe Bryant and Lisa Leslie are in two different lanes. Yes, they were friends, but they were not directly related to each other. So Gayle King was being was really trying to sidetrack and throw her off for ratings. It's unfortunate because just as Oprah Winfrey and Gayle King, Kale, are revered and held in high esteem as great journalists and being groundbreaking in the media of television, I noticed especially with the outcry after Snoop Dogg's response, was that nobody ever thought to really go to the source. Nobody even thought to address these two women directly. I mean, when Oprah Winfrey came out and claimed that Kale has been getting death threats and so on and so forth, it was like, okay, a lot of people receive death threats, and it's very clear to me personally that you are far and removed from reality. The timing of asking that question was totally inappropriate. And as a person of color, man, woman, child, we all have this emotional connection to loss, celebration, family, and we give a lot of gravitas to those situations. And LA being a very big sports town, yeah, that's not good for you, Kale King. Not good for you, Kale. Not good for you, Kale. But what I noticed, because I had watched the Red Table Talk episode with Snoop Dogg today, is that a lot of the friction and a lot of the social responsibility was solely placed on Snoop Dogg's shoulders as a man and as a an adult male, adult black male. Of course, there's always this tone and this social construct responsibility kind of thing, where the black male is to always know better and to always protect the black woman, and to be very careful as to the treatment of her. And to some extent, I do agree with some of that, but to a greater extent, I refuse to believe, especially in this era where, a lot of women want equal rights, equal pay, equality across the board, but none of that equality is coming their way with accountability and responsibility. That question, those line of questions regarding Kobe, and his case that was well over 15 years ago, had anything to do with Lisa Leslie. Kale King had as much responsibility and an option not to ask that question, and Snoop Dogg really had an option to not go in as hard. While I do agree with what he said, I don't agree with his delivery and his tone. I totally relate to and feel his pain. Because again, like the loss of Kobe, even though I wasn't a big basketball fan, the man was a huge cultural impact on me, and for a lot of other people my age or younger. And I do believe that he pretty much built LA post Michael Jordan's era, and basically esteemed or exalted NBA to a whole nother level, and walked so LeBron could run. So I was very, 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 very protective and compassionate. Like, yes, he is a public figure. However, you're talking, when you bring up his name, you're also bringing his family into it. Yet and still, that point was only made in the direction of Snoop Dogg in the Red Table Talk. Because at the top of the Red Table Talk, Jada Pinkett made it seem like he was addressing all women and hurting all women. Which, again, to an extent, I do slightly agree with that, but to a bigger extent, I absolutely refuse, because there's not that same energy when it comes to Kale coming out of her mouth and addressing another woman about a man. and his criminal case, which is basically character assassination and a jab to a person that's passed. It was very insensitive, and it was very unprofessional on Kale King's part. And I don't, as I've gotten older, I have kind of stepped away from this all-inclusive, traditional. What I've seen is that, women want equal rights, but only on the privileged side. It's not on the quote-unquote negative side, where be held to the same standard, equal accountability. And long gone are the days where, you have to be chivalrous and protect them. Long gone are the days where they hit you and you can't hit back. It's self-defense, and there's some women out that really push physically, like put their hands on a man repeatedly. And it's not always about size. It's not always about height. It's not all about weight. I've seen women that look and probably weigh a $110, soaking wet with 2 bricks in their back pocket. And you think, oh, you know what? She can't take me. Can possibly knock a man out cold, or dislocate his neck, or dislocate his shoulder. And oftentimes the man goes to jail. And I commend those that don't actually punch a woman. They restrain themselves to just pushing her out of the way. But yet, and still, sometimes a woman will keep going. And at what point do you, are the lines crossed and are like, okay, this is too much. I don't condone hitting children. I don't condone being abusive to little children. But I still believe in self-defense is self-defense. And coming up as I've gotten older, I do not believe that every situation between a man and a woman, an argument, a verbal fight, or a domestic situation is strictly one-sided. And we're beyond just, agitating or pushing buttons. We're talking actually throwing hands, punching, like fist to face, fist to side of face, smacking, all of that. I don't honestly believe that it's 100% a one-sided thing, which just the man doing whatever. But a bigger point from when I was watching this Red Table Talk with Snoop Dogg is that I see that as a society we're still placing most of the, I want to call it accountability weight, on the men, since it's perceived that, they're the stronger one, they should be more, practice more resolve, and practice more logic, and because they are the stronger of the sexes, they're not to make defensive or be defensive, physically defensive against women. And that pain that they inflict when they do make it physical or verbal towards another woman affects all women. And that we should all be unified, and that piece is on the man's shoulders, and it's up to the man to be responsible for the unity and the togetherness and the safety of all women. And I'm just like, the last time I checked, the partnership or the dynamic is between two people, not just one person. And for whatever reason, it's never been equitable. As much as women want things to be equitable. I walked away from that Red Table Talk episode with Snoop Dogg with a little bit more questions and a little confusion. I mean, for the most part, Red Table Talk is pretty good. And it's pretty good for what it's done to support and encourage conversations between different people, and giving insight into a person's thought process. However, it really didn't cover any new ground. I mean, the episode itself was a little over half an hour long, and they kind of touched on Death Row and Suge Knight and Snoop Dogg's relationship with the two of them, and their label and Tupac and everything. So it kind of was a surface level interview for me. I would have liked more insight as to more about his wife's handling of Snoop, and did they have an actual in-depth talk from a woman to a man, a wife to a husband. Snoop has a daughter I wanted to know more about, because to me, if he actually has, if Jada is to believe that Snoop has hurt more than just Kale King, I would have liked more conversations about geared towards that. What was the conversation between Snoop and his daughter? What was the conversation like between him and his wife? And I would have liked him to expound more in the interview about his conversation between himself and his mom. Because we have to support that opening statement. When you've gone against Kale King, that hurt my heart. And when you've gone against Kale King, you're not only hurting Kale King,